table and a dining room.
Now this is fun. This is Ruth Lesly for the Hastings Historical Society, talking with Muriel Anastasi at her home at 78 Pinecrest Drive on February 5th, 1991. Hi, Muriel.
Hi.
I have a lot of questions, and I'm fascinated with this stuff that you have here, so we'll get to those things very soon. You were born in Hastings. Were you delivered at a local hospital?
Yes, I guess it was called St. Yonkers General, on Ashford Avenue. Yes.
And when did your parents buy the property here?
In 1912.
Oh my! That was the beginning of this whole development.
No, there were some houses already there. I think Sun's property on Warburton Avenue, the first big stone house. The Rowley estate was here, I believe. And there was a little house here. I don't know who lived in it. Eventually, my aunt bought it.
So you had family here. Where had your family come from? From the city?
Well, my mother and father came up here as bride and groom. And they had lived in the city. But they were married and they came here.
Oh, this was their first home.
It was their first home.
And their only home?
That's right.
And did you have brothers or sisters who were born here also?
No.
No, you're an only child. Okay. How do you think they heard about this? Where did they get hold of this wonderful map?
I have no idea unless they just saw it in the paper.
But they
This looks like a special
flyer of some kind.
They may have gone to a real estate agent, and this was one of the things that was being brought out.
And your father, what were your parents' names?
Leonard.
Okay.
And my mother's maiden name was Raya, and it was bought under the name Raya.
Interesting. Do you know why they did that instead of under Leonard?
No, I guess they weren't married yet.
Oh.
And she bought it.
And
the building was started, and then they were married December 31st, 1912, and moved in.
Oh, that's lovely. Okay.
In those days, you didn't take a honeymoon so much.
Well, it was honeymoon enough to come to a new house, I would think. Tell me about your childhood here in Hastings. What was it like? Were there a lot of children in the area to play with?
Get out of here.
Later on, families did move in with children. The Buffards, which you made later on, they live in where the Purses live now. There were 5 children there, and the Gifford children lived. And so we had quite a group of children, and right next door were children.
Was there any kind of a formal preschool group, or you just all played with each other?
No, you all played around, and then you went to the public school up in Hastings. And you walked up along the aqueduct to school. You had no school bus.
Well, when you were very little, did the children just walk together, or did a parent come along?
No, I used to walk up alone.
Really?
Like my mother sometimes used to meet me at the foot of the hill, and I would walk down that far. See, when I was much younger, I don't remember that. I suppose you walked all the way with me then.
Yeah. But I suppose there wasn't so much traffic then anyway.
No. And if you went up the aqueduct, you didn't meet anybody.
Yeah.
And years ago, I know there used to be what they called tramps. And they had a place they lived down on the aqueduct up there near the home there. And they were...
Near the home?
Well, not the home, what's the Wyndham School now? It
Oh,
used to be
Graham,
the Graham School.
Right.
And they had a camp up there, but they were perfectly harmless. In fact, one of them used to give my mother his money when he was sober, so that she would keep it for him, because then he'd go off on a bender, and then he would want some, and if she kept it for him, then when he sobered up, then he'd come and get it again.
He'd have some money then. Did these tramps come around and ask for food and things like that?
Once in a while, but not much. They really left you alone. They were perfectly, I guess, nobody feared them.
Yeah.
You felt perfectly safe on the aqueduct.
Do you remember any of the names of any of your teachers?
No, that I don't.
Okay. What's your most vivid memory of your childhood? Did anything especially exciting?
Up here?
Yeah, or terrible or wonderful happened?
No. It's just an average childhood.
Yeah, it sounds like it might have been.
And then I left school up here. At about the 8th grade, I went down to go to school where my father taught in the city.
I see. What school was that?
Well, he was at PS 79 on the concourse. And by that time, my mother was teaching also.
Uh-huh. There or up here?
No, she taught in the city schools, too. She
Uh-huh.
taught PSA.
Uh-huh. So you were in junior high or high school at that point?
I was about 7th or 8th grade when I went down there. And then I continued there and went into high school down there.
I see.
So I never went to the schools up here much.
Uh-huh. Just your first
Yes.
just your first few years. Was there any special reason why they chose to have you go to school in the city? Was it just more convenient?
I
or?
guess it was more convenient for them because then I was taken care of.
Yeah, and you traveled in and out with
Yeah,
your...
I traveled with my father.
Yeah.
And then in high school, I was able to travel alone. Then I went to college at Mount St. Vincent.
Uh-huh.
And I was a day student. Yeah,
Oh, so you lived at
yes,
home?
Yeah, I lived all the time. I lived at home.
Ah, uh-huh. Okay, you've answered a lot of my questions. Because you attended school out of the area, did it affect your social relationships here, or did you come?
It did, because I didn't have as many young friends up here.
Mm-hmm.
I used to depend on the girl that lived next door who went to school up here.
Uh-huh. What was her name? Do you remember?
Delanoy, Ruth Delanoy.
Uh-huh. I've heard the name Delanoy. They lived here a long time, too,
Yeah,
didn't
it
they?
was Mrs. Waldron,
Mm-hmm.
because her mother had married again.
Uh-huh,
But
uh-huh.
she was Delanoy. And
Yeah.
then her brother lived up in the Parkway. That's right, Norman. Ruth's brother lived up in the Parkway, Norman
Uh-huh,
Delanoy.
uh-huh.
One of those houses up there.
You said your aunt bought the house next door. Did she marry? Was she married and had
No,
children?
she was a maiden lady.
Uh-huh.
And
So
she
you-
was very fond of her brother. So when we moved up, when my father moved here, she moved next door.
Uh-huh. Okay, but she didn't provide you with any cousins to play with?
No.
Okay.
In fact, she didn't, it was a family break. She didn't actually ever see me.
Really? Was that early on? Or?
Yes.
Yeah. Hmm.
Never.
That must have been a rather sticky wicket.
Yes.
Uh,
I would say it got solved when with you.
Yeah.
Funny thing, she accepted my children, but she didn't accept me.
that's interesting. Well, I guess we'll never know.
Every family.
Why?
does.
Oh, yes, I think so. When you were living...
No, she
No,
never
no,
married. She was a spinster.
But I meant this Spencer.
Where did the kids in this neighborhood hang out, if you will? Where did they, I mean, if you wanted to see your friends, where,
Well, you went to each other's houses.
okay, it wasn't like it is today where they may
No.
meet on street
Now,
corners?
there were the
or-
Horrys who lived up there in the park. In fact, I think Mr. Horry had a business in Hastings for
Uh-huh.
a while. Now, we would go up there, Jacqueline played tennis a lot. We would go to her house, or they would come down to my house. You went to each other's houses.
Yeah.
You didn't hang out anywhere, as far as I know. Of course, see, maybe the high school people did, but I wasn't there then.
Yes.
But I don't think there was as much hanging out in those days. Even, do you remember it?
Well, I grew up in a much smaller town than this,
You
so we
didn't
didn't
hang
have...
out, did you?
No,
Oh.
we went to each other's houses, and played records in the living room.
That's what we did. That's right. We had a Victrola wound up,
Uh-huh.
and you had a pile of popular records. I can think of that. We'd have a party, and we'd take up the rugs,
Yeah. That-
bringing back those memories.
Well, that's what we're trying to do. Were there any problems that you saw as a teenager in Hastings? Were there...
No.
No? You're making it sound very idyllic.
Well, it was, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Now, this was all before the black families moved into Hastings. When did that start?
I would say this was an ideal colony, interracial colony here in Pinecrest.
Was it when you were a child? Were they...
No, that came later.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any idea of
I'm trying to think
when?
Yeah, up here at Chance's. When I was a little girl, the Turkish people lived there, Ozani.
Mm-hmm.
Because I used to play with him, Leonard Ozani, a young boy they had. And they must have come in when I had moved away from here. Now, I moved away, I got married in 1940.
I see. And you didn't settle in Hastings then?
No, I went down to the Bronx where he had an office.
Uh-huh.
We lived with the office. And there might have been some families there, but I don't think Clark had moved in yet, and there was still Ozani there. Then Chance bought that. When they
Mhm.
left, Chance bought that.
Were they the first
I think
black
they were
family?
the first.
Okay. Did I guess I'd have to ask you how your family felt about it since you were no longer here. Did they feel as though they were living in an experiment, or?
No, but if you knew my father, he wouldn't find anybody bad.
I heard.
He would get along with anybody.
I have heard wonderful
Yes.
things about your father.
He was everybody's friend.
Long before I knew you were his daughter.
And I would say that this neighborhood got mixed very well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You didn't feel there were problems to
And
start
from what
with.
I've heard, when we weren't here, I gather they had quite a social life, and everybody mixed in together.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm quite close with Mrs. Adams now,
Yes.
and when she talks about their parties and that, you can see that everybody got along.
Isn't that wonderful? It's really.
And it didn't deter from selling, because the Dr. Stewart owned the house, first house as you drop down the hill there.
Mm-hmm.
And when he sold, now white people bought, and there were
Yes.
already colored in the neighborhood. It hasn't deterred them from buying.
Did you ever hear about any white families moving out when the first black families moved in? So it really worked out, as it had been.
Different breed of people.
Now look, the Purses have lived there, and now the Roths and Williams lived there before. Then Adams bought. Now
Yes.
they didn't move out. The Noyes
right.
lived next door. They didn't. They were all friends.
Yes.
We were quite friendly with the Noyes.
Yeah, I
And
remember
everybody
Hope
got
very
along.
well.
Hope was a wonderful person.
Yeah, yeah. We had political contact.
That's right, yeah. The Stewarts and that were very close because we gave a party down at Stewart's when the Noyes moved away.
Uh-huh. And everybody in the neighborhood.
I remember I made a pan of lasagna to bring down.
Ah. That's a long time to remember that pan of lasagna. Did your family belong to any church in Hastings?
St. Matthew's.
Mm-hmm. And was this an important part of your family life? Were you active members,
No,
or
it wasn't. My father went to church.
Mm-hmm. Were your parents involved in any local political groups like the school board or the League of Women Voters? Or?
No, they would be involved in anything pertaining to Pinecrest.
Uh-huh.
But that's all, yeah.
Yeah. So you feel their life was really revolved around Pinecrest rather than Hastings
Yes,
as a
they
whole?
get involved with this political issue with that, but that's all.
Yeah, yeah. Was your family member of any social clubs in Hastings, or volunteer things like the fire department?
No.
Or were they members of any local Pinecrest? Was there a Pinecrest association
Yes, they were active in that. In fact, the people that lived where Bullens are, he was president for a while. I don't know who it was either, because I know my father helped write. They went up to Albany for something. It must
Yeah.
have been in connection with the view here.
then? Oh, view preservation.
View preservation.
Uh-huh. Do you know when the Pinecrest Association was formed?
I imagine Brady could give you that information. Mr. Brady.
Really?
Who was president.
What were the activities and goals of the association? Do you know anything about that?
No, I imagine it was to see who moved in and how the roads were kept up and a view preservation again.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have any idea of how frequently it met?
No, see, I was away.
Yeah.
See, when I left, when I got married in 40, from then on, quite a bit happened.
Oh, yes, I think so. I thought
And then I didn't come back again. I came back again in 59.
Uh-huh.
And
To
all-
this house?
Yes.
Uh-huh. So you never lived anywhere else in Hastings?
No, just here.
Just here. I don't know why I thought you had lived on Acres Lane. Just a misperception. Were there any other Pinecrest groups, intellectual groups or cultural groups, like a reading group or anything in the area that you know
Not
of?
that I know.
Uh-huh. Who were your friends in Hastings? You mentioned the Delanoy girl. Who else were your friends?
You mean at that time?
When you were still, yeah.
Well, the people that lived here, the Ruth Delanoy lived here, or Waldron, or Jacqueline Horry up on there, and the Giffords, and all those people have all moved away.
Yes. And they all lived in Pinecrest,
They all
though.
lived in Pinecrest.
So you
See,
didn't-
I didn't have any friends outside of Pinecrest.
I guess that's because you didn't go to school here. Once the black people started moving into this area, was there any attempt to maintain a racial balance in Pinecrest that you know of?
Well, I know that Dr. Patrick, who owned in where Sutter is, right next to where Cass is.
Uh-huh.
I know that when another black family moved in, maybe when the Stewarts, the man next to Stewart, he went down and he said he didn't want this to become a Negro colony. I had
Yes.
heard that,
Yeah.
but that's all.
Okay. So there was nothing planned about
No.
balancing it. They just. Do you happen to know how it started? How did the first black family have the courage to come up here?
I don't know.
Who was
But I don't know. Remember
Yeah.
who the first black family was. And on the Parkway, there's Mrs. Bourne. I believe her name before was Black.
Mm-hmm.
But they all must have come up after I left, or when I wasn't.
Maybe when you were
Yeah.
after you were married.
See, I remember when Julian lived up there, and Mrs. Waring. But now I'm going way, way back,
That's okay. Go way back.
and
I mean,
there were no blacks there. then.
yeah. Yeah.
But maybe because they were all intellectuals, that it never bothered.
Yeah. I wonder how it was for them.
I know this must be hard. Must have been hard.
Yeah. I How did you feel about growing up in Hastings? Did you think it was a great place for a young person to
Well, naturally,
live?
because in those days, wherever you landed, you grew up and you were happy. You didn't go around so much, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you married right after college. You never came home again?
Yes, yes. I graduated in June, and by the following September, I married.
Oh my goodness! You wasted no
Not
time.
that September, the following year, because I met
Yeah.
you when I graduated, and then I had met him through a friend,
Uh huh.
and she had come from the Bronx. I'd gone to college with her, and then we were married.
Are you still involved in your alumni association since you're so close? Do
With
you ever?
college?
Yeah. Do you ever?
I was in the beginning, not so much now. I did go back for my 25th anniversary.
Uh-huh. My next door neighbor's daughter graduated from Mount St. Vincent, but
And Dorothy Brave, that used to work at
oh yes, yeah.
She did because...
Did she?
Yes.
Did you know Dorothy then?
I didn't know her because she must have been before my time.
Yeah.
But we met again at the library, and now I hear she's quite ill.
Is she?
Yes.
Oh, I hadn't heard that. I'm
I
sorry.
met her sister.
When you were married, did you give any thought to coming to Hastings, or you just felt it was best to be right where the practice was?
Well, in those days, it was much better to be near the practice.
Yeah, I imagine the Bronx was different then.
Now, of course, most of them live away.
Yes.
But in those days, when a doctor made house calls, it was much more convenient.
I can see that it would be.
And I've never regretted it. Now I think you don't have the closeness with the family. Well, now everything is specialization.
Well, you have to know every patient.
I knew all his
every
patients.
family
Yes.
that
Were you
came to
involved in the office?
I became involved in the office, and then that's another thing. When we moved up here, I was going down to the office in the afternoons.
Uh-huh.
Because I used to run the office and take the x-rays and do a lot of dictation and that, so I got to know them all.
Is that what you had specialized in
No, I had
college?
specialized in it at all. I fell into it.
What had you planned to do with your life?
Well, I was going to teach, but at that time, when you graduated, there were no jobs.
Ah,
So I guess then I took a secretarial course. I guess I would have done that, but then I got married.
yeah. That was preferable, I'm sure. How many children did you
I
have?
have 2 girls.
Uh-huh. And were they born while you lived in the Bronx? Or
Yes.
Did they spend any of their childhood years here?
Yes, when we came up here, Muriel had 1 more year of high school. She went up here, and Joan had 3 more.
Uh-huh. And did they go to Hastings
Yes, they
High
went to
School?
Hastings High School.
Did they find it a good
Yes,
experience?
Muriel, they fit in very well. There were pajama parties and pizza parties and everything else here.
Uh-huh.
I found all about school life then.
All that you had missed, you
Yes.
found then. That was great that coming at
Yes, they
so
fell
late
right
in.
into that beautifully. In fact,
Okay.
then I put in a second telephone, second number, because
Uh-huh.
you couldn't get through.
And what was your own social life like when you came back? Were there any people that you still knew?
Well, I got very friendly with the Noise and the Stewarts and that, but I had so many contacts of our own from the Bronx, and plus in other parts of Westchester.
Yes.
See, they had moved up. I knew people in Scarsdale. I knew people in Riverdale.
Uh-huh.
And we had such an active social life that way. I didn't get so involved here.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, now as it turns out, it seems to me when you get, after my husband is 83,
Bless you.
we don't have too many left. You know what's happened.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, that does happen.
But I do know the Stearns and the Dahlbergs and Jesse and the Purses.
Do people socialize in the neighborhood?
You don't know anybody other than...
Then in Pinecrest itself,
Uh-huh.
I don't know any other.
Yeah. And do the people in Pinecrest still socialize?
I don't think as much because they've all gotten older.
Yeah.
I think I socialized more with the noise, but then they moved away.
Yes.
And I guess probably if they were gotten older, they wouldn't have so much. And then George Hill lived right next door.
Uh-huh. And who lives in the houses next to you now?
You mean this side?
Yeah.
The Brody.
Oh.
And before that was
Is he-
Coles.
Is he the man who you said is now president of the
No,
Pinecrest?
that's Brady. That's
Oh,
on the...
yeah, Brady and Brody.
Yeah, he's on the Parkway. But Brody bought this house, and before that there was Cole.
Mm-hmm.
They were a lovely couple.
Was that Lottie Cole?
Yeah, Lottie.
I remember her.
Yes, and then her husband was electrocuted.
Oh, I didn't know
It was
that.
terrible.
In the house?
No, he worked on ships,
Mm.
and he had gone out to do electrical work on one of the ships coming in. And, you know, they have foreign workers, and they had the electricity off and somebody put it on.
Oh, boy.
He was electrocuted.
And he was a marvelous, oh, what a wonderful neighbor they were.
Mm.
Wonderful neighbors.
And then Lottie moved away after that?
She stayed a couple of years, but then she moved. She went out to California.
Mm-hmm. And, of course, Dr. Schweich died.
Yes, and then some other people took that. Her son lived there a while, and then...
Yeah. He built the swimming pool, I
Yes,
hear.
that's right.
I remember Peter when he was a young lad,
Uh-huh.
but...
And then the Hendersons bought Noise.
Mm-hmm. Are they still there?
No, they moved away, and I think Metalbahn has it.
Neighborhoods do
See,
change.
they have all young children, which are, I don't know now.
Yeah.
Sue Merton lives across the street. She's lived there a long.
Oh,
well,
yes.
her children all went to the school in Hastings, I think. In fact, they lived in a Noise house before, I think.
Really?
Yes, Sue Merton.
Huh. Does Vanessa live up here, or is she...
Yeah, Vanessa came back. Yes,
She did?
Came back last year.
Uh-huh. So she's here with her
Yeah,
mother.
with her mother.
And she had a brother, as I recall.
Bob.
Yeah.
Bob Merton. He was around my kid's age.
Mm-hmm. Were they friends? Do your kids keep up with any of their old Hastings friends?
There aren't, no, because there aren't too many left. Because
Yes.
when you go away to college, you make different friends.
Yes. How is it for your daughters when they come home here? Do they feel a sense of being at home, or I don't
Oh,
mean in your
yes.
home, of course they would
Oh,
here,
yes.
but in
Well,
the
Muriel
community.
only lives in Hartsdale,
Oh,
so Joan is out in Aspen, Colorado. So
Uh-huh.
she comes in about twice a year.
yes. I think you mentioned she was coming in for Christmas this
Yeah,
year.
she came in for Christmas.
Oh, that was lovely. Is there anything else about the area that you'd like to share with us? Any impressions or feelings or?
Oh, I love the area.
Yeah.
It's ideal.
You were not unhappy then to come back.
No.
Um,
Well, I guess I like the country. I don't have to do something all the time.
yes.
We've done our traveling, thank goodness. 'Cause I don't think I could do it now.
Well,
I think people shouldn't wait till the end to travel.
I agree with you.
Of course, you can't go off all the time, but you should do it while you're still able to move around.
I agree with you. I'm gonna do it as long as the
Fortunately,
feet go.
my husband gave up private practice, and he went to work for Montefiore full time. And that's when we really could travel, because you would have 2 weeks off, and you didn't feel, when you went away when you were a doctor and somebody covered, you always came home and found complaints.
Yes.
Oh,
Oh, he didn't come, but
That's
the other was different, and that's when we did it.
yeah.
Travel.
That's when we did everything.
Yes.
Was that coincidental with the time that you moved up here? Was there any particular reason that you came back to Hastings at that time?
Yes, my mother had died in '54, and my father was living alone up here.
Uh-huh.
And you couldn't leave him alone.
Yeah.
So that's when we came back in '59.
Yeah.
And we kept the two-family house, and his mother and father moved upstairs, but we still kept
Is this
the
a
office.
two-family house?
No, down in the
Oh,
Bronx.
you mean in the Bronx. I didn't
But
think
no,
this
this
was.
was-
Well, we had a two-family house. We lived upstairs. And
At the office
the
downstairs.
Uh-huh.
office was
And we kept
downstairs.
that.
It was very convenient.
Sure. What part of the Bronx were you in? Near Montefiore? Or?
Yes.
Well, we were on Bronx Boulevard.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't too far from us.
Facing the park.
But we had moved up here. You didn't go to Montefiore till after we were up here. We moved up here in 59. And you didn't go to work to Montefiore for a while. You still kept the office. Oh, you went to work to Montefiore in about 69. Yeah, when Muriel had just graduated from college.
Uh-huh. Neither of your daughters lived at home when they went to college? Did either of them go to Mount St. Vincent? Or?
No, Muriel went to Manhattanville and
Uh-huh.
and Joan went down to Florida for a couple of years.
Uh-huh.
She just went 2 years and then wandered around. Went to California, what have you.
Sounds typical. It's always struck me that this would have been a wonderful neighborhood to live in.
But now, I think we're getting another generation here. So there's a lot of old families, but I can see that down the street there's the young children at Bullens, there's young children
Yes.
now at Metalbaum, and I believe on the Parkway there must be a lot of young families.
Well, there are new houses up there, aren't there, on the Parkway?
Yes. And all those houses that have been built at sort of the end of the Parkway were all redone and sold, where Painter lives and people like that.
Yeah.
And there were young families in there. Because one day I saw the school bus at the top of the hill and I couldn't get over the number of children getting off that bus.
That's how a neighborhood changes.
Yes.
It evolves. I remember when I was the new kid on the block, and now they're all young families.
And we have another family down here that just moved in, and they have a little one in the playpen.
Uh-huh.
Well, they'll be growing up, and then the Metalbaum has 2 young ones growing up, and there'll be another generation coming along.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of as it should be.
That's the way it should be.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think either of your daughters will ever think about moving to Hastings?
Well, maybe Joan will come back. I don't know.
I would think Muriel, more chance of Muriel.
Yeah, Muriel and Frank moving in here or something like that.
Yeah. But you have no intentions of moving out. You're
No,
gonna
I
stay.
don't.
Good.
As I said to Jessie the other day, I said, I guess she said, no, they're going to carry me out in a box. I said, I think so too.
That's what I say about my
I've
house.
heard of more people that move away and something happens the minute they move.
Yeah.
A year later, and then you're stuck in a place where it's all new people.
Yeah. Besides, how could the library get along with that? How long have you been a volunteer at the library, Muriel?
I have no idea.
I mean, I know you were there a long time when I was there, and
Yeah.
it's been years now since I was there.
And, how long is it since you've been?
I retired in 1986, so it's 4.5 years now.
Well, I must maybe have 6 or 7 years of that.
Oh, at least.
Maybe.
At least. I think so. Has
I
that...
enjoy it, but it's very different now. I think all of us should really work a week straight, and then everything would become part of you.
Yes.
When you go once a week, it's hard to remember all the different things to do with the buttons. Do you volunteer?
Once in a while. I sub for somebody once a month, and it's pretty bizarre. Well...
We have a wonderful village, a wonderful library, far more than a lot of others have.
Yes, yes. Do you pay attention to what's going on in the village with the, projected projects of the housing
Maybe
down
not
at the...
as much as I should. I was interested in the waterfront. Of course, it won't affect me here, but I don't know how they're going to get across that bridge on the other side.
Yeah. I don't know.
I went across that bridge to see if you could get on the downtown side of the station without going down those steps.
Mm.
And I realized that's a nasty trek there.
You mean the little footbridge?
Yeah, no, the little bridge you go over by car there.
Oh, yeah.
Is that the
yeah.
only bridge they intend to have?
I don't know. If so, there are going to be problems.
There's going to be problems.
But I have to assume that...
And I realized the entrance was way, way at the end of the station, so that wouldn't be any good. You might as well go
Yeah.
down the steps.
Yeah. I take my husband that way to go play tennis.
Well, that's where the tennis arena is.
Yeah. Are you involved in any other activities besides
No.
the library? You don't belong to the women's club? Or...
No. I guess when I first moved up here, that when I should have done those things, but I was still busy down there.
Sure.
I didn't do it.
Well,
See, now you've become involved in the Historical Society.
there's always time. You can still do it if you want to.
There's lots of things we can do. There's hospital volunteer, library work. Lots of
Yeah.
things we can do.
Yeah. A lot of people volunteer at St. John's.
Well, when chance you had was after I gave up the practice and went to work
For Montefiore. Then I had free time because then I didn't have